Good day everyone. So I thought I'd update you with a small video on Commando men. So a lot of people have been asking me about how I'm getting on, and I really want to be able to talk about it. So it's a 10-part TV series I'm writing. I haven't got anyone to produce it yet, but I'm hoping. And it's about 4-5 Commando. It's about the Second World War, and it's about one troop in particular, Able Troop. And it all started with a photograph. There's a very famous photograph of Able Troop on the grass in South Sea before D-Day on the 4th or 5th of June. And it's a group of guys. And so I went through it and I tried to identify who was who with some help from Commando Veterans Archive and Royal Marines Historical Society and other stuff that's out there. And I was able to identify most of the guys, and also then their timeline. You know, how far did they get through? Where did they start? How did they get into the unit? How did they become commandos? And then where did they end up? And of course, 4-5 Commando had quite a large casualty rate and turnover rate, and so about half of those guys probably don't make it to the end. And I've turned that into a 10-part TV series. And this TV series is going to take you from guys who were career soldiers, career Marines, who'd served in the 20s and 30s, and guys who just joined up, who wanted to do their bit, didn't know how to do it. One of the guys in particular is quite a famous character throughout. He thought he was going to join the Navy, and when he got told he was going to actually join the Marines, he was quite gutted. And his father said, "We've all got to be somewhere, just go and do it." And he did it, and he became one of the top snipers, even mentioned by Lord Lovett in his book. And he's got some great stories, and there's some real good, you know, down, gritty, real life, and hopefully on the big screen take you there. You know, what was going through the minds of these guys, you know, the fun, the laughs, and then the serious part of it. And I want to take us back to the 1940s. I don't want to make a film that, you know, portrays people of today in that situation, because they weren't. They were us, but they were a different us. So I want to take us back there. I want to show the hardships. I want to show the laughs. I want to show how they bond together and how they go to war. You know, how they're nervous, how they fight, and those different characters. You know, there's lots of different characters, and there's lots of stories that aren't told. There's lots of little bits I found out that need expanding on. You know, there's lots of interesting areas that we can explore, and they were our grandfathers and our fathers, and of course grandmothers and mothers as well, because there's WRVS involved. I try and build a bit of a picture of the lodgings and how people were living under the threat of the Blitz and all those, especially the Liverpool Blitz, where one of the key characters comes from. He's a 18, 19-year-old kid. His dad and mum, his dad was a World War I veteran, and they run a pub in Liverpool, and he was a volunteer during the Blitz, saw a lot of that and decided he wanted to get his own back, and so he joins the Marines. And we follow them through, you know, from different backgrounds, and they are real characters, and we watch what they go through. So some other quite famous characters who will be famous, I hope, one day. We got Derek Catebread, who was a sniper, and he was mentioned in Lovett's book. He was a very good sniper, and we can tell his story and his number 2 story all the way through the war. So they basically train, they become commandos, tell a story about that, about how they lived in the UK, trained, and then prepared for war. D-Day itself, which is very, very under seen from a British point of view, and they land on the beach. The story behind that, for example, they're on the landing craft infantry Small, which they thought was really just for training, and they didn't really think they were going to go to war in a wooden boat, and that's what they did. And there's things like the tea, you know, sat there having briefings on that final voyage that night before, drinking tea, eating soup from a can, and preparing themselves for that morning. And I don't think that's ever been told, not from that sort of very close, you know, oily, smelly, dangerous place. Where they're trying to get sleep, they're joking, they're nervous. You know, we can tell that story, and then we actually go from the start line all the way through, in fact the forming up area, all the way through, so we see Warspite coming across, we see the monitors firing in, In fact, it was so difficult to find out who was in what boat and what happened to each boat, because different craft got hit in different ways. Some hit mines, or one hit a mine, sorry. One gets struck by artillery, but that artillery shell actually passes another craft first, goes through it, and then hits the other craft. So to get that story together was very difficult, but I think I've managed to do it, and I actually ended up making my own models of the little on foam board with the LCIs with their numbers on, LSI, sorry. And then I did a chart on the floor, drew it out of the beach, where things were from photographs, and then I drove the boats in. I drew the timeline, as I know the speed of the boats. You know, I used to be a landing craftsman, so I understand how the process works. And then I drove the boats in and worked it out. So I think you don't need to fictionalize it too much. If you tell the real story is good enough. And it was pretty frightening. They weren't expecting to go into a hail of fire. They had 40% casualties by the time they got to the other side of the beach, and after that first day. So it was you know, we haven't heard that story. We don't get to see it. Now we're going to be there. We're going to be there with them, with real people crossing that beach and getting ashore. The next day was pretty grim too. And the commandos were only expected to stay 1 or 2 days. They were there really for the flanks, and they were expected to stay a few days. They ended up staying 90. So we tell the story how they meet up with the Paras. They tell the story how they hold that whole area against the Germans, against German counterattacks, mortars, and all those things, and how they lived a daily life. So I found out something that I didn't know before. For example, that the Troop Sergeant Major, who's quite a big character in this, his job was to put the tea on in the morning. So he would put the tea on for everyone before stand to. Then they stand to just in case the enemy come over at first light, which is the normal routine even today. But also, if he believed there was going to be an action, or they'd just come out of action, they would also get an extra tot of rum. So he would walk around with a water bottle full of rum and dish the rum out. The other thing is the lads used to get rum every day, the Marines, and if they didn't want the rum or they didn't get it for some reason, they got an extra a few pennies every day extra wage because they didn't get their rum. So you know, there's lots of that can just be woven in, and we get to feel our fathers and our grandfathers and what they went through. So I think it's a great story. It's quite sad in places. I've had to map the timeline very carefully of when guys get lost or injured or withdrawn, and it's such a good story. It's such an amazing story. So they go through Holland. They don't expect to go to Holland actually. They get withdrawn after 90 days back to the UK. They train to go to the Far East because they think they're going to go and be part of the final sort of attack through Asia and into Japan, and that's what they go to train for. And then the Battle of the Bulge happens, and then they get redeployed back out to Holland in that very, very cold winter. They end up getting redressed. So they've been going around the south coast in pith helmets for Asia, and shorts and shirts and training in the cold, pretending to be in the jungle in the cold and wet, and then suddenly they are in whites and Denison smocks again, and they're back out into Holland. And we follow them then through Holland. They cross the Rhine on that very famous day as part of Plunder, and then they have quite a fight all the way through Germany then, across those rivers until they get into Germany itself. And then the final part of the story is those last few days in Germany, and also the last guy to get killed. So there's a very interesting story at the end. The last guy from 4-5 Commando to get killed is a sergeant. He attacks a gun position with his men, and they win. They get to the other side, they're clearing back through, and one of the young Germans just falls for some reason, falls backwards, nervous or whatever, his gun goes off and it shoots the sergeant in the back. He's killed. And on that very same day, they watch a Spitfire and a Messerschmitt in a firefight over them, in a dogfight, and that German pilot crashes down dead close to them, and they bury the two guys on the same day, quite close together, one German, one British. So you know, it kind of ends like that, and then a very nice epilogue at the end where we watch them go back for a reunion and tell a few of the stories and round it off. So yeah, it's a fantastic story. I've loved writing it. I think it's amazing. If no one turns this into a TV series, I'll cry, but I'll turn it into a book. and we'll get it out there, because it is a story that needs telling, and it's so many funny things in there. There's so many sad moments. It's, you know, let's get it out there. Let's get people on the screen, and let's watch this and laugh and cry together watching these guys who fought for our freedom. Okay, anyway, thank you very much for listening. If you got this far through, 7.5 minutes, my God. Anyway, it's Commando Men. You can find it on my website. You can just search for it, or you can find it on my website, on my royalmarineshistory.com website. There's a link to it there, and it tells you a little bit about the episodes and how they break down. And hopefully soon I'll have a few sort of trailer videos and things we can put together to get out there. So, Commando Men, 4-5 Commando, able troop. Okay, thanks very much. Bye-bye.